There comes a time in every life when God says, that is enough. A moment when what once strengthened you now drains your energy. The same place that once brought you calm now weighs on your spirit. The same people you once fought to keep now pull you away from your purpose. And when that moment arrives, it isn't confusion. It isn't loss. It is God himself bringing an end to a chapter that has lasted too long. You may not recognize it yet, but the ending you fear is the protection you once prayed for. God is shutting the door that has been wearing you out. And though your heart may resist it, your spirit knows it is time to release. Some of you have been clinging to things that have already expired. You've been trying to breathe life into something God has already called complete. You've been fighting battles that are no longer yours to win. You've been watering barren ground, hoping for a harvest that will never grow. And God in his mercy is stepping in. He is saying, my child, you've carried this long enough. You've wept long enough. You've tried to mend what was never yours to repair. It is time to close this story. You may see it as rejection, but it is redirection. You may feel it as loss, but it is liberation. You may think you are breaking, but you are truly being rebuilt. When God ends a season, it is never out of cruelty. It is always out of compassion. He notices the tears that never reach your face. He hears the quiet prayers you whisper when you are alone. He knows how exhausted you are from pretending to be strong while your soul feels heavy. God knows what that season has drained from you. He knows how much effort, hope, and faith you've given to people and things that gave nothing back. He knows how empty you felt trying to hold everyone together while no one noticed how tired you become. And now he is saying, I am stepping in. I am taking this weight from you. I am ending what has been exhausting your heart. Some of you are afraid to release because you don't see what is next, but you don't need to know what is next. You only need to trust the one guiding you. God never closes one season without preparing another. The same hand that shuts one door is already unlocking the next. The same God who removes what drains you is creating space for what will renew you. But you must stop reaching back. You can't step into what God has designed while holding on to what he is ending. You can't receive new blessings with hands full of old burdens. When God ends a chapter, he is not punishing you. He is positioning you. There are moments in life when God must pull you away from what feels safe. It is not to wound you. It is to restore you. Sometimes comfort turns into captivity. You can become so familiar with pain that you start mistaking it for peace. You can grow so accustomed to chaos that stillness feels strange. You can hold on so tightly to what depletes you that you convince yourself you can't live without it, but God loves you far too deeply to let you remain bound to something that is quietly breaking you. So he begins to remove, he begins to reveal, he begins to reveal, he begins to shake the very things you once thought were secure. And suddenly what once seemed steady begins to crumble. That is when your faith has to rise. That is when you must remind your soul that when something ends under God's directio, it means it has fulfilled its purpose. You see, God never wastes a chapter. Even the painful ones carry purpose. Even the draining moments hold meaning. They build endurance. They sharpen discernment. They teach you how to depend on God when you can't discern his path. Every time you walked away from what was damaging you, God was preparing you for what would strengthen you. Every time someone exited your life, it wasn't rejection. It was realignment. God was reorganizing your story for the next phase of your destiny. And though you may have wept over what was gone, one day you'll thank God for what he took away. When God begins to end a season, the first signal is discomfort. You start feeling unsettled in places that once felt safe. You start sensing distance and connections that once felt close. You start losing passio for things that once defined your identity. That is not coincidence. It is divine orchestration. It is God's gentle whisper telling you it is time to move forward. The same peace that once confirmed you were in the right place now fades, and you find yourself uneasy. That unease isn't failure. It is direction. God uses discomfort to shift you from what no longer serves his plan for you. You can't build your next chapter in a place that no longer carries your purpose. And sometimes the chapter that drains you isn't about people. It is about your own perspective. God might be closing the chapter of fear that has governed your life too long. The chapter of doubt that made you accept less than his best. The chapter of overthinking that made you question his promise. The chapter of trying to control outcomes that were never yours to command. He is not only removing people or circumstances, he is transforming your mind. Because as long as your thoughts thoughts live in the past, you'll keep replaying it. God wants to move you from simply enduring to truly flourishing, from anxiety to assurance, from depletion to divine empowerment. But first, the old must conclude. You might be in a moment right now where everything feels unsure. You don't know how to release. You don't know if you'll recover. You don't know what life looks like without that person, that job, that season, that dream. But listen closely. What is ahead will not drain you like what left you did. God isn't ending this chapter to leave you empty. He is creating room for peace. The kind of peace that doesn't flow from people, but from His presence. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on what happens, but on who you trust. You've spent too much time being the strong one for everyone else. Now, it is time to let God be strong for you. Some of you have confused endurance with purpose. You assume that because you've tolerated something for years, it must be where you are meant to remain. But God never called you to suffer endlessly in places He already freed you from. He never asked you to keep pouring strength into what drains your soul. He is not asking for your exhaustion. He is asking for your surrender. Because surrender is where true transformation begins. When you stop trying to repair what is broken and start trusting God to rebuild what is meant. That is when the shift takes place. That is when strength is restored. That is when the weight finally lifts. Because God cannot fill what is already crowded with what He is trying to remove. Some good things turn into burdens simply because their season has expired. There is nothing wrong with them. It is just that their time is over. And when time runs out, no amount of effort can keep them alive. That is why it feels so heavy. You are resisting God's flow. You are clinging to what He has already finished. But when you release your grip, when you let go, peace will return. You'll realize you weren't losing strength. You were spending it on what was no longer meant for you. You'll see that what felt like an ending was really a new beginning wearing disguise. Because every ending with God is the birth of something greater. You see, God often shuts doors your emotions still want to keep open. He allows certain things to crumble so your attention can turn back to Him. When everything feels like it is falling apart, it is actually falling into place. God will let the wrong people leave so there is space for the right ones. He'll let opportunities fade so that you are free for better ones. He'll let relationships drift because He knows their presence would delay your destiny. It is not punishment, it is perspective. God is revealing who and what truly belongs in your next chapter. Sometimes God ends seasons with silence. He stops giving the same confirmations you once relied on. The peace that once surrounded you begins to fade, and the door that opened easily now remains shut. That silence isn't absence. It is direction. It is God whispering. You've learned what you needed here. It is time to move forward. And as you move, fear may come, loneliness may follow, doubt may rise, but every step away from what drains you is a step closer to what fulfills you. Every moment you choose faith over fear, you honor God's plan more than your own comfort. The truth is that draining season wasn't designed to destroy you. It was designed to refine you. It built the resilience you'll need for what is ahead. It stripped away arrogance. It taught you endurance. It made you rely on God instead of people. It sharpened your discernment. And now God says you've learned all you needed from that struggle. You've matured enough in that pressure. You've endured long enough in that place. Now, it is time to step forward because there is a version of you that can only appear after release. The old version of you can't hold the new blessing. The weary version of you can't carry the next calling. That is why God is ending what exhausts you, so you can finally breathe freely. Again, some of you have been praying for restoration without realizing that restoration requires removal. Before God rebuilds, He clears away. Before He blesses, He breaks attachments. Before He lifts you, He empties you. That is why it feels like loss, but it is not loss. It is preparation. God is creating a clean space within you for new strength, new people, new doors, new peace. And the reason He is sealing certain doors so firmly is because He knows if they stayed slightly open, you'd go back through them. So He closes them completely, not to wound you, but to shield you from returning to what He has already freed you from. Once you begin to see that God's closures are acts of mercy, you stop grieving endings and start expecting beginnings. You stop viewing loss and start recognizing love, because sometimes the greatest proof of God's favor isn't what he gives, but what he removes. He removes distractions, he removes false comfort, he removes attachments that made you rely on people instead of him. And though it stings, one day you'll look back and understand that what you thought was breaking you was actually blessing you in disguise. Because if God hadn't ended that season, you never would have discovered your courage, your value, your purpose, or your faith. You don't have to resist what God is finishing. You only have to trust that his purpose is far greater than your perception. Every season that ends under his hand leads to something stronger. The same God who allowed the storm will also bring the stillness. The same God who lifted the burden will replace it with wings. You may not see the whole picture yet, but one day you'll thank him for not letting you remain in that draining space. You'll realize he rescued you from more than you knew, because sometimes the greatest miracles unfold quietly in endings and farewells that didn't make sense in the moment. Right now, you might be standing in that in-between space. One chapter closing, the next still unseen. That is where trust is born. That is where faith deepens. That is where you learn that peace doesn't come from knowing what is next, but from knowing who holds what is next. You can stop worrying about how it will unfold, because God has already written the story. The same God who started your story is the one removing the parts that no longer serve your purpose. He knows exactly what each chapter of your life should include, and he knows precisely when it is time to turn the page. The people who left were never meant to carry your next blessing. A job that ended was never your source. It was simply a vessel. A relationship that faded wasn't your foundation. It was your teacher. God is cutting away what drains you because he is preparing what will sustain you. And when you finally stop resisting, when you finally yield and whisper, God, I trust you, even here, something begins to shift within you. You start to feel lighter. You start to sense hope rising again. You start to remember that your story isn't finished. It is just being rewritten by the author himself. Let this truth rest deeply in your heart. What God removes, he replaces with something greater. What he closes, he restores with peace. What he ends, he follows with promotion. That is how God operates. You think you are losing something, but in truth, he is exchanging your exhaustion for insight, your grief for grit, your struggle for strength. The draining season isn't your destination. It was only preparation. And once you truly embrace that, you'll stop fearing change and start anticipating miracles. So if God is closing a chapter in your life right now, don't resist him. Follow his lead. Don't mourn what is leaving. Make space for what is coming. Don't spend your energy trying to reopen doors he has sealed. Instead, lift your head, stand tall, and declare, God, I trust you, even when I don't understand. I trust you, even when it hurts. I trust you even when it feels unjust. I trust you because trust is what turns endings into beginnings. Trust is what transforms pain into purpose. Trust is what replaces anxiety with peace. You are not being punished. You are being pruned. And pruning always precedes greater fruit. God is trimming away what no longer produces life in you so that something beautiful can blossom. That is why you've been feeling the pressure. That is why you've been losing things you once thought were essential. It is all part of a divine blueprint. God is aligning your path with his purpose, not your preference. And though that may ache for a moment, it will restore you for a lifetime. So walk away from what drains you with grace. Release it without resentment. Bless it, then let it go, because the same God who saw your tears will bring you triumph. The same God who watched you endure will honor your endurance. The same God who took something from your hands will place something better in them. Something that brings peace, not pain, purpose, not pressure, fulfillment, not fatigue. You don't need to chase what left. You just need to prepare for what is next. God is closing this chapter, not because you failed, but because you finished well. You've gained the lessons you were meant to learn. You've matured in ways you don't yet recognize. You've shown that your faith can stand through storms. Now, it is time for restoration. It is time for renewal. It is time for divine turnaround. What once drained you will no longer define you. What once broke you will no longer bind you. You are entering a season where God himself will restore your soul. He will send people who will pour into you the same way you poured into others. He will bring peace that outweighs the heaviness you've carried. He will bring strength that makes you look back and say, now I understand why that chapter had to close. So let God finish it. Let him complete what he began. Let him work in ways only he can. Because when God ends a chapter, he does it with precision, he does it with purpose, he does it with love. And when he opens the next one, you'll see that every tear, every delay, every detour, every disappointment was shaping you for this moment where you finally find rest. Not in what is behind you, but in what is ahead. And it will all be worth it. There comes a moment when God silences the noise of your life and softly whispers to your heart, "It is over." That whisper isn't defeat. It is direction. It is God freeing you from the weight that has been quietly suffocating your spirit. You might not grasp it now, but endings aren't God's punishment. They are his protection. There are battles you can't win simply because they were never yours to fight. There are people you can't rescue because they were never meant to stay. There are places you can no longer find peace because God has already moved your spirit beyond them. What once fit your life perfectly now feels heavy, and that is God's way of showing you that you've outgrown this season. Sometimes God removes what drains you. Not because it is wrong, but because it is complete. He knows when something has served its purpose. You see, life with God is a series of sacred assignments, and every assignment carries an expiration date. When a chapter reaches its conclusion, trying to extend it only creates frustration. You begin to lose your joy, your passion, your clarity. But God doesn't want you to live weary. He wants you to live renewed. He didn't create you to barely survive in places that empty you. He created you to thrive in the peace that comes from trusting his timing. So when he starts closing the door, let him. It is not a mark of loss. It is the sign of new life. Every draining season carries a lesson. But once that lesson is learned, a pain must cease. God doesn't keep you in suffering without end. He allows it just long enough to strengthen your heart and refine your wisdom. He allows discomfort so that clarity can emerge. When your comfort zone turns into your cage, he shakes the walls until you move. You may not enjoy the shaking now, but one day you'll thank him for setting you free. Because every time you resisted letting go, God was trying to show you something deeper, that your value isn't tied to what you are holding on to, but to the one who is holding you. The human heart is stubborn. It clings to what is familiar, even when it is no longer fruitful. It keeps believing people will change, that situations will improve, that old places will somehow bring new peace. But when God closes a chapter, no amount of pleading will reopen it. You can't ask him to bless what he has already declared complete. He loves you too much to let you stay attached to what is depleting you. So he begins to remove things softly at first. And if you still refuse to release, he takes them more firmly, not out of anger, but because he knows you'll never discover your next blessing if you keep idolizing your past. There is a reason your spirit is felt uneasy. It is not because you are lost. It is because you are being led. That restlessness within you is spiritual movement. God is rearranging your atmosphere, your relationships, your focus, your strength. He is not tearing down your found at on. He is rebuilding it on truth. And here is the truth. Peace cannot dwell where pretense rules. Growth cannot thrive where fear governs. God cannot fill what you refuse to empty. So he begins the process of closure. He drains what has been draining you, not to crush you, but to cleanse you, because in the quiet that follows, you'll finally hear his voice again. Sometimes God allows disappointment to become your deliverance. You'll think someone abandoned you, but in truth, God released you. You'll think a dream collapsed, but God redirected it. You'll think you lost something valuable, but he was removing what was slowly poisoning you. The reason it hurts so deeply is because you are attached to the illusion, not the truth. You were in love with how it once was, not with what it had become. But God sees past your nostalgia. He sees the version of you that cannot grow in that same soil. He sees the peace you've forgotten you deserve. So he breaks the cycle. He ends the story. He brings you to a place where your only choice is to trust him fully. And that trust, how powerful it is. Trust isn't born in clarity. It is born in confusion. Trust grows strongest in the fog, when you can't see 2 steps ahead but keep walking anyway. God never said the path would be easy, but he promised he'd walk it with you. He promised every tear would become strength. Every setback would prepare you for greater things. Every goodbye would lead to a new beginning. You might not see the whole picture yet, but one day you'll look back and realize that what you call pain was really preparation. God doesn't close chapters out of frustration. He closes them out of precision. Every ending is intentional. Every removal is intentional. He never acts out of impulse. He moves with insight. He sees sees what you can't. He understands the motives of hearts, the timing of seasons, and the dangers still hidden from your view. You may think you are ready for certain things, but he knows that clinging to what drains you will cost you what he destined for you. That is why he doesn't ask for your approval. He asks for your trust. Trust to believe him when the closure feels painful. Trust to hold on when peace feels distant. Trust to keep walking even when the ground seems to vanish beneath your feet. Some of you are still asking, why did this chapter close? Why did they leave? Why did that door shut? Why does this ache feel so personal? But the truth is, if you always knew the reason, you'd never learn to trust. God doesn't owe explanations. He offers assurance. Assurance that even when you can't make sense of the ending, you can rely on the author. God's plan for your life isn't fragile, it is fortified. And when he ends something, it is because it can no longer carry you into your tomorrow. You may still love it, but it is no longer aligned with your purpose. So he calls you higher. He begins planting new desires in your heart that don't belong to your old environment. You start craving stillness instead of noise, solitude instead of chaos, depth instead of approval. That is how you know the transition has begun. God is drawing you out of what drains you and into what defined you. The very things that once amused you no longer satisfy your soul. The people who once entertained your flesh no longer feed your spirit. You start hungering for peace. You start valuing presence. You start realizing that some battles aren't worth fighting because God already gave victory through your release. You can't heal in the same place that hurt you. God knows that. That is why he is moving you. It is not about escape. It is about elevation. Some spaces can no longer sustain your growth. Some conversations can no longer meet your depth. Some atmospheres can no longer carry your anointing. And so God closes them. The sooner you surrender, the sooner you recover, because the longer you resist, the deeper the pain. God isn't waiting for your understanding. He is waiting for your trust. Every time you let go of what drains you, you make room for peace. Every time you stop chasing what is gone, you welcome what is meant to come. Every time you stop questioning his process, you start experiencing his power. But it all begins with release. You can't walk into new strength while old struggles weigh you down. You can't receive your next blessing while still gripping your last burden. God is trying to fill your hands with purpose, but you keep holding on to pain. Let it go. The same God who carried you through yesterday will uphold you tomorrow. You are no longer the person you were in that draining season. You've matured, you've shifted, you've evolved. And because of that, God must bring you into new spaces that reflect the new version of you. Old places can't contain your new wisdom. Old relationships can't respect your new boundaries. Old habits can't hold your new strength. That is why God is ending the chapter not to punish you, but to promote you. The things that once described you no longer define you, and the only path forward is through faith. It is time to stop trying to fix what God already finished. Some of you are still trying to revive what God has already buried. But when God ends something, no amount of effort can reopen it. He doesn't want you to rebuild what he has removed. He wants you to rest in what he has revealed. He has shown you enough signs. He has sent you enough reminders. He has whispered enough times. Now he is taking action because he knows you won't move unless he shuts it completely. And when he closes it, no one can open it again. Don't fear the quiet that comes after the closing. That silence is sacred. It is where God speaks the clearest. It is in that stillness your heart realigns, your vision sharpens, and your peace returns. What once seemed like loss begins to feel like Libra Ion. You start breathing easier. You start walking lighter. You begin to see that you never lost yourself. You rediscovered who you were before the weight of that season dimmed your fire. And when God begins a new chapter, you'll sense it. You'll wake with renewed energy. Inspiration will begin to flow again. You'll feel peace in places that once caused pain. You'll find joy in simple moments again. That is how you'll know the transition is complete. Because the peace of God will rest where pain once lived. The heaviness will lift, the confusion will fade, and you'll look back not with regret, but with gratitude. Because the same God who allowed the storm also gave you the strength to endure it. So keep your focus on God, not on the door that shut, not on the people who left, not on the chances that slipped away. Keep your focus. Eyes on the one who governs it all. He is writing a new chapter for you. One filled with rest, renewal, and strength. You won't need to force it. You won't need to fight for it. You won't need to exhaust yourself to sustain it. What God brings into your next season will flow naturally because it will align with your purpose and be covered by his presence. You've cried your last tears over that past season. You've carried your last burden from that chapter. You've fought your last unnecessary fight. Now, it is time to walk fully in the peace of closure. God is closing the chapter that has been draining you, and you no longer need to look back, because what is before you isn't chaos. It is clarity. It is not pain. It is purpose. It is not emptiness. It is divine completion. God isn't merely ending something. He is restoring everything. And when you finally step into that new season, you'll understand why God made you wait, why he made you release, why he made you rest. You'll realize his plan was never to take from you. It was to prepare you. Every delay carried meaning. Every ending carried mercy. Every loss carried love behind it. And when you look back from the place of peace, you'll declare with conviction, "Thank you, God, for closing the chapter that almost broke me, because it made space for the one that finally built me." There are moments when the weight of life presses so heavily on your heart that you begin to wonder if God has forgotten you. You pray, but the silence feels endless. You try to stay standing, but the ground beneath you keeps moving. Yet, it is in those very moments when you feel most abandoned that God is doing his most sacred work. What appears as silence is actually strategy. What feels like emptiness is preparation. God isn't punishing you. He is positioning you. He is removing what depletes you, because he knows true strength cannot thrive in constant struggle. He is ending the season that took more from you than it ever gave, because his love refuses to let you wither in the place where you once flourished. You see, God never ends a chapter without writing a greater one. But here is the truth many overlook. The closing is necessary for the cleansing. Before God pours new oil into your life, he clears away the old residue. He removes distractions that dulled your discernment, relationships that disturbed your peace, responsibilities that became idols. He empties you to prepare you. That is why you felt stripped, stretched, and refined. God isn't tearing you apart. He is clearing you out, because only an emptied vessel can be filled with something pure. When someone or something has been draining you, you start confusing exhaustion with purpose. You convince yourself this heaviness is normal, that this is just life, but that is not the life God intended for you. He promised peace that surpasses understanding. And that means even in chaos, there is calm. Even in uncertainty, there is rest. But peace can't remain where your soul is constantly pouring energy into what no longer aligns with your calling. That is why God intervenes. When you refuse to walk away from what is killing your spirit, God removes it himself. And yes, it hurts, because he often has to loosen your grip on the very thing you once prayed to receive. But what you don't realize is that what once was a blessing has now become a burden, and God loves you too deeply to let you drown in what once kept you afloat. Sometimes you must step out of comfort to discover your true calling. God will allow certain things to fall apart to reveal where your real strength comes from. He'll let a plan collapse to remind you that his wisdom surpasses your best design. He'll permit people to drift away to show you that your value isn't tied to anyone's presence. Because as long as you keep relying on the wrong source, you'll remain cut off from his power. God doesn't take away what exhausts you to leave you void. He removes it so his strength can move freely again. And that is the truth many never grasp. You cannot hold God's peace and your past pain within the same heart. One must leave for the other to thrive. The season that has been draining you has consumed too much of your emotional and spiritual space. You've tried to fix it, prayed over it, wept for it, but sometimes God doesn't call you to restore it. He calls you to release it. Because the instant you let go of what has been silently weakening your faith, God revives what has been buried under your fatigue. When God ends a season, he completes it fully. He leaves no unfinished threads. He removes access, redirects people, silences messages, shifts opportunities. He seals every path back to what once broke you, and you might call it rejection, but it is actually redirection. You might call it loss, but it is truly liberation. God knows that if he doesn't close it completely, your heart will keep returning to it. He knows that if the door stays slightly open, you'll keep glancing back at what should have ended. So he locks it tight, and when he does, don't waste your energy knocking. There is a quiet courage in learning to say, if God ended it, I accept it. Because that statement marks the turning point between despair and destiny. The moment you yield to God's closure, you step into his current. You stop trying to control outcomes and start walking in harmony. And within that harmony, life begins to breathe again. You notice how light you feel without the burden of needless battles. You start realizing how peace settles when the wrong noise fades. God doesn't simply remove things. He rebalances your soul. He restores your ability to believe again. He grants you clarity where confusion once lived. For too long, you've been running on empty trying to sustain something God already declared finished. You've spent energy explaining yourself to those who were never meant to understand you. You've traded peace for attachment, but God is ending that cycle now. He is showing you that peace isn't found in what you cling to. It is found in what you surrender. And when you finally let go, you'll see that what you feared losing was never meant to remain. Because what is truly meant for you will never drain you. It will renew you. God's plans don't drain, they direct. His paths don't diminish, they define. When something continually leaves you anxious, empty, or uneasy, that is not a divine test. It is divine correction. God is revealing the difference between what He provides and what you've chosen to settle for. His blessings carry a calm that cannot be imitated. So when you begin to feel lighter again, don't confuse that peace with isolation. It is not isolation, it is freedom. God has lifted you out of the storm and placed you in stillness, so He can renew what has been worn within you. And in that stillness, you'll uncover the most powerful truth of all. Not everything that exits your life is a loss. Some departures are proof of answered prayer. You asked God for strength, and He removed what drained you. You asked for clarity, and He ended what clouded you. You asked for peace, and He silenced what unsettled you. He heard you, but His responses arrived through endings. And because you didn't perceive His hand in the closure, you assumed He had forgotten you. But every door that closed was His way of saying, I am guarding your peace. At times, God will take people out of your life, not because they are bad, but because they're not essential for where He is leading you. You'll question why certain bonds fade, but God knows that some hearts can't carry your next season. Some voices can't comprehend your next assignment. Some company can't accompany your next climb. So He allows distance not to isolate you, but to shield you from diversions that would scatter your focus. The higher you ascend, the quieter it becomes. And the quieter it becomes, the more distinctly you'll hear Him whisper, you are finally ready for my use. If your spirit has felt restless, it is because you are standing on the edge of transformation. The chapter that exhausted you was also the one that shaped you. It taught you endurance, humility, and the worth of peace. It revealed who cared, who pretended, and who truly walked beside you. God used it to sharpen your discernment. You've been refined through struggle, not destroyed by it. And now that the refining is complete, God is sealing that door so you can step into the light without looking back. Don't resist the closure out of fear of uncertainty. God never guides you from wholeness into void. He guides you from emptiness into fulfillment. He never removes something without offering something greater. You may not yet see the replacement, but it is already written into your destiny. The same God who allowed the tears will soon exchange them for triumph. The same God who permitted the loss will fill that space with abiding peace. You may have endured a season of dryness, but the rain is on its way, and when it pours, you'll realize that the ending was never punishment. It was preparation for your promise. Let God seal what He must. Don't reopen what He has closed. Don't pursue what He has released. Don't resist what He has completed. Trust that every ending within His will leads to elevation. The peace you've been longing for waits on the other side of obedience. The strength you've been seeking is hidden in surrender. When you finally stop resisting the closure, you'll see you never lost control. God simply took it so you could find rest. And from that rest, He will rebuild you stronger than before, with a spirit that no longer bends beneath the weight of what once broke you. So lift your head even amid the uncertainty. God has not overlooked you. He is simply completing what was never meant to continue. The door is closing, yes, but your destiny is unfolding. And soon you'll understand that everything that exhausted you was only making room for the peace that is about to overflow. There comes a moment when God calls you to stop glancing backward and begin stepping forward. You've carried the heaviness of that past chapter long enough. You've shed the same tears, asked the same questions, replayed the same memories, and still peace has stayed distant. That is because God never intended for you to remain there. The very pain that emptied you was also the signal that God was preparing a divine transition. You may not have noticed it, but behind the quiet, behind the confusion, God has been scripting a fresh beginning for you. Every disappointment, every loss, every silent prayer was not the conclusion of your story. It was the closing of a chapter that no longer nurtured your growth. Now God is saying, it is finished, let it go. He is sealing the door not to punish you, but to protect you. You might not grasp it right now, but God never removes something from your path without providing something greater. The pain you've endured wasn't meant to destroy you. It was designed to refine you. It was designed to refine you. God has been peeling away everything that drained your strength, everything that blurred your direction, everything that pulled you away from his whisper. Because when God decides to lift you to a higher level, he will not allow you to carry unnecessary weights. So stop resisting the ending. Stop trying to revive what God has already laid to rest. If God has closed the door, it is because that way no longer leads to your promise. You cannot enter the new while holding on to the old. Sometimes the closure you've been longing for will not come from people. It will only come from God. He alone can give your heart peace about what didn't work out. He alone can still the storm that has been raging in your soul. And when he speaks, the turmoil must quiet. When he moves, everything once uncertain begins to align. This is your season to rise again. The same God who allowed you to face the storm will now use that storm to fortify your foundation. You are no longer who you used to be. You are wiser. You are more discerning. You've learned that peace is more precious than validation, that purpose is greater than applause, and that walking with God is far better than being approved by people. The pain that once exhausted you has now become the ground where your faith has taken deep root. And from those roots, God will produce new fruit in your life, fruit that will endure. Do not fear walking away from what no longer carries the favor of God. When he ends a chapter, he already knows the next one overflows with greater joy, richer peace, and unexpected blessings. You may not see the full picture now, but faith is trusting the author, even when you cannot read the next sentence. God does not require your comprehension to fulfill his plan. He only asks for your surrender. When you release what has been depleting you, you create space for what God has been waiting to place in your hands. So stand firm, lift your head, dry your tears. You are stepping into a new season, written by the hand of God himself. The same hand that once carried you through the valley is now leading you toward the summit. The same God who saw you shatter will now watch you blossom. The days of feeling empty are nearing their end. The nights of questioning why are giving way to mornings filled with quiet strength. The very thing that once seemed like a curse will soon be remembered as the turning point where God redirected your path. Let this truth sink deeply into your spirit. When God ends a chapter, it isn't rejection, it is redirection. It is his way of saying, I love you too much to let you settle for less than what I've prepared. Every closed door, every sudden ending, every silent goodbye was part of a divine design. You may not have chosen the pain, but you can choose how to move through it. You can choose to believe that God is still sovereign, still crafting your story, still preparing a table before you in the sight of everything that tried to defeat you. So today, make the choice. Release the chapter that has drained your soul. Let go of the bitterness, the regret, and the constant urge to understand. Choose peace over resentment. Choose faith over fear. Choose to trust that God's plan is still unfolding even when your heart has yet to see the evidence. Because faith doesn't wait for proof. It rests in the truth that God is faithful forever. Let your heart find peace in this. God's work in you is not complete. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are being positioned. You are being prepared. And when the new door opens, it will not mirror the old one. It will not demand that you fight for your worth or plead for love or prove your value. It will carry peace. It will align with purpose. It will unfold effortlessly because it will come from God. Hold your head high and move forward. Leave the former chapter with grace, not resentment. Leave it knowing that God witnessed every tear and every sacrifice and none of it was in vain. The pain you went through was not the conclusion of your story. It was the fire that refined your spirit for what is ahead when God turns the page. No one can reverse it. When God declares it's time, nothing in this world can postpone what he has destined. Let these words dwell in your heart. The chapter that drained you has ended, and the peace you've been praying for is on its way. Stand firm in faith. Watch closely to see what God will do next. Walk with calm assurance, knowing that the one who shut the old door has already designed a better one. And when it opens, you'll understand why you had to wait, why you had to let go, and why it all needed to unfold this way. Because in the end, you'll realize that God never took anything from you. He was simply creating space for something greater.